There's a photograph that exists in the Library of Congress. It was taken in 1928, somewhere along the banks of the Mississippi River. In it, a man stands perfectly still, his face turned slightly away from the camera. His hands are at his sides, his expression is calm, too calm. Behind him, barely visible in the shadow of a willow tree, is another figure, blurred, watching. For decades, no one noticed it. Then in 2003, a researcher studying depression near labor camps zoomed in. What she saw made her leave the archive and never return. The figure in the background wasn't blurred by the camera. It was blurred because it was moving toward him. And according to the coroner's report, filed 3 days after this photo was taken, the man in the foreground had already been dead for 2 hours when the shutter clicked. That photograph was never supposed to be published. It was never supposed to leave the file cabinet it was buried in, but someone leaked it, and once you see it, you start asking a question you can't unask. What if the moment between life and death isn't a moment at all? What if it's a place? And what if someone filmed it by accident? Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. This isn't a ghost story. This is about something far worse. This is about the space between heartbeats, the seconds that don't belong to the living or the dead, and the people who got trapped there. Some of them are still trapped, and the worst part, we have the footage, not just one clip, dozens, filmed across 100 years by people who had no idea what they were capturing, until it was too late. Until they realized that the camera sees things the human eye refuses to, things that should have stayed hidden, things that waited in the margins of old film reels, patient as stone, watching us watch them. This story begins with a family, a bloodline cursed not by witchcraft or revenge, but by something older, something that doesn't need a reason. It just needs a witness, and in 1893, in a town that no longer exists, a camera became that witness. The Hendrick family lived in a place called Ashford Hollow, tucked into the Appalachian hills of eastern Kentucky. Population in 1893, 217 souls. By 1902, population 0. The town was abandoned so quickly that dinner plates were left on tables. Doors hung open. A schoolhouse bell still swung in the wind, ringing to no one. For 90 years, no historian could explain why. Then in 1994, a film archivist named Thomas Lyle discovered a canister in the basement of a condemned church in Lexington. Inside was a reel of nitrate film, badly decomposed, labeled only with the words Hendrick Documentation, October 1893. Nitrate film is unstable, flammable. Most of it from that era has turned to dust. But this reel had been stored in a lead-lined box, sealed tight, almost like someone wanted to preserve it, or contain it. When Lyle finally restored enough of the footage to watch, he saw something that made him contact the FBI. The film showed a family gathering, a birthday, maybe, or a reunion, men in dark suits, women in high-collared dresses, children sitting stiff and solemn, the way children did back then when a camera was a rare and serious thing. They're all facing forward, all perfectly still, but if you watch closely, if you count the faces, you'll notice something wrong. There are 11 people in the shot, but only 10 shadows on the ground. Lyle thought it was a trick of the light. Old film does strange things, but then he noticed the girl, second row, far left, maybe 7 years old. She's staring directly into the camera, not posing, staring. Her mouth is open, just slightly, like she's trying to say something, and her eyes, even through the grain and flicker of century-old film, her eyes are filled with the kind of terror that doesn't come from surprise. It comes from recognition. She sees something, and in the last 3 seconds of the reel, just before the film burns out, she begins to step backward, slowly, like she's trying not to be noticed, trying not to wake something up. Thomas Lyle spent 2 years trying to find out what happened to that family. What he discovered is this: every single person in that footage died within 6 months, not from disease, not from violence. The death certificates all list the same cause, in the same handwriting, signed by the same country doctor, who himself died under suspicious circumstances in 1894. The cause of death, written in faded ink on each certificate, is simply cessation. Not heart failure, not respiratory collapse, cessation, as if their bodies just stopped, as if something reached in and turned them off, and the girl in the footage, the one staring into the camera, her name was Elena Hendrick. She was found in the woods 3 miles from town, sitting upright against a tree, eyes open, skin cold. She'd been dead for a week, but her footprints in the snow around her were fresh. After Lyle's discovery, other archivists started looking. Not officially, most of them didn't want their names attached to this, but word spreads in tight communities, and the community of film preservationists is very tight. They started finding more footage. Always the same era, always the same setup, family portraits, celebrations, everyday moments captured on expensive early cameras, and always, somewhere in the frame, something that didn't belong. A figure in a window that no one remembered being there. A shadow moving against the light. A face in the background, staring while everyone else smiled. In 1998, a reel was found in an estate sale in Savannah, Georgia. It showed a wedding from 1910. Beautiful footage, remarkably well preserved. The bride and groom descending the church steps, rice thrown into the air, friends and family cheering. Except if you slow it down, if you watch frame by frame, you can see that in the crowd there's a man standing completely motionless. Everyone around him is moving, laughing, celebrating. He is frozen. His face is angled toward the couple, and his mouth is open, not smiling, just open, like a door. The groom's name was Samuel Frost. He died on his honeymoon, drowned in a lake that was 4 feet deep. The bride, Margaret, lived another 60 years but never spoke again, not a word. Her medical records describe her as catatonic but aware, her eyes constantly moving, constantly searching the room, as if she was watching something no one else could see. When she finally died in 1972, the nurses said her last gesture was pointing to the corner of the room and shaking her head. Over and over, no, no, no. Then in 2001, another reel surfaced. This one from a state fair in Ohio, 1925. Just crowd footage. People eating cotton candy. Kids on carnival rides. A man winning a stuffed bear at a shooting gallery. It's happy, innocent, but around the 2-minute mark, the camera pans across the fairgrounds and catches something near the Ferris wheel. A woman standing alone. She's wearing a white dress, out of style even for 1925, something from an earlier time. Her hair is long and loose, and she's staring directly at the camera. Not at the cameraman, at the lens, at you. 3 witnesses who were at that fair later gave testimonies to local police, all saying the same thing. They saw the woman, they remembered her because she never moved, never blinked. She stood in the same spot for 4 hours, and when people tried to approach her, they felt something they described as cold air, but not air. Something thicker, something that made their teeth ache. By evening she was gone. No one saw her leave, but over the next 2 weeks, 6 people who had been at the fair that day died in their sleep. No trauma, no explanation, just cessation, and when investigators reviewed the footage again, hoping to identify the woman, they found something that made them stop the investigation entirely. In the final frame where she's visible, just before the camera pans away, her face changes. Not gradually, instantly, from one frame to the next. Her expression goes from neutral to something that one investigator described as not human, not animal, just wrong. He refused to elaborate. He resigned a week later. Not everyone who encountered this phenomenon died. Some survived, but survival in this case might be worse. In 2004, a journalist named Claire Hathaway tracked down 3 people who had been present during filmings where the anomaly appeared. She published her interviews in a small private journal that was later pulled from circulation. I managed to find excerpts. The first interview was with a man named Daniel Cormack, 80, 3 years old at the time, living in a care facility in Vermont. He had been a child in 1934, present at a family reunion in rural Maine that was filmed by his uncle. When Claire asked him what he remembered, he didn't answer for a long time. Then he said this, "I remember it was hot. July, we were all outside near the lake. My uncle had just bought a camera, one of those handheld ones, real modern. He was so proud. He filmed everyone, my parents, my cousins, my grandparents. I was sitting on the grass, and I remember looking up and seeing someone standing at the edge of the woods, just standing there. I thought maybe it was a neighbor, someone passing through, but they didn't move. Not the whole time, and I remember feeling like I shouldn't look at them. Like if I looked too long, they'd know. And then my uncle pointed the camera that way, just for a second, panning across the lake. And I swear, the moment that lens turned toward the woods, the person moved, not walked, moved, like they skipped forward, closer. I blinked, and they were 10 feet nearer. I started crying. My mother thought I was scared of the camera." Daniel said the film was never developed. His uncle died 2 weeks later in a car accident. The camera was buried with him. Claire asked him why. Daniel looked at her and said, "Because my grandfather told us to." He said the camera saw something it wasn't supposed to see, and if we looked at what it saw, it would see us back. The second interview was with a woman named Iris Pembroke, 70, 6 years old, living in New Mexico. She had been a bridesmaid in a wedding in 1955, filmed by a local photographer. Iris remembered the day clearly. She said the photographer was acting strange, nervous. He kept checking the camera, shaking his head, wiping the lens. At one point, he stopped filming entirely and asked if anyone else felt cold. It was August, 90 degrees. No one felt cold, but Iris said she did. She felt it coming from behind her, like someone standing too close, breathing on her neck. She turned around. No one was there. But in the developed film, reviewed years later by her daughter, there's something standing behind Iris in every single shot. A shape, humanoid but wrong, too tall. Shoulders at the wrong angle, no face visible, just a dark mass where a face should be. Iris refuses to look at the photos. She told Claire, "I don't need to see it. I felt it. It's been following me my whole life. I see it in mirrors sometimes, in windows, just standing there, waiting." The third interview was the shortest. A man named Peter Alden, 68, living in Oregon. He was part of a film project in 1968, a student documentary about rural life. He and his friends were filming in an old barn when the camera malfunctioned. It kept rolling even after they pressed stop. It recorded for 20 minutes on its own. When they played it back, they saw themselves leaving the barn, getting into their car, driving away. Except in the footage, they're still in the barn, standing in the background, watching themselves leave. Peter said, "I don't know what that was, but it wasn't us. We never went back to that barn. One of my friends killed himself in 1970. Another disappeared in 1975. I'm the only one left, and sometimes I wonder if I'm really still here, or if I'm still in that barn, watching myself leave over and over forever." Claire Hathaway never published her full findings. Her journal entries stop in late 2004. Her last entry says only this: "I've started seeing it too. If you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if this was your bloodline?" So what is it? What are we actually looking at in these films? The theories range from mass hysteria to dimensional bleed to something far older and far worse. Some researchers believe that early cameras, with their long exposure times and chemical processes, were accidentally tuned to a frequency the human eye can't perceive. That they were capturing not ghosts, but something that exists parallel to our reality, something that only becomes visible when observed through a specific medium. Others think it's psychological, that the act of being filmed, of freezing a moment in time, creates a kind of wound in reality. A scar, and something moves into that scar. Something that feeds on the attention, the observation, the act of watching. But there's another theory, one that's darker, one that suggests this isn't a new phenomenon at all. That it's been happening since the beginning of human consciousness, since the first time we tried to capture life, to freeze it, to hold it still, cave paintings, death masks, daguerreotypes. Every time we've tried to preserve a moment, we've opened a door. And something has always been waiting on the other side. Dr. Emil Cross, a neuropsychologist who studied trauma and perception before his death in 2011, wrote an unpublished paper on what he called liminal witnessing. His theory was this: the human brain is designed to process continuous reality. We experience life as a flow, moment to moment, breath to breathe, but a camera doesn't work that way. A camera captures slices, frozen fragments, and in those fragments, time doesn't flow. It stops. Cross believed that in those stopped moments, in the space between frames, there exists a kind of gap, a place where the rules of causality break down. He called it the interstitial, the space between life and death, between presence and absence, and he believed that certain people, certain moments, certain images could create doorways into that space. Not intentionally, but accidentally, and once the doorway is open, once something from the interstitial is photographed, filmed, observed, it becomes anchored to our reality. It gains a foothold. Cross wrote, "We think of photographs as memories. But what if they're more like chains? What if every time we look at them, we're pulling something closer? What if observation isn't passive? What if it's an invitation?" Cross died under strange circumstances. He was found in his office, slumped over his desk, no signs of trauma. His computer was on. On the screen was a video file, paused. The timestamp showed he'd been watching it for 6 hours straight. Colleagues who reviewed the file said it was just black screen. Nothing visible, but in the audio, barely audible, there was something, a rhythmic sound, like breathing, or like something trying to mimic breathing. The file was deleted by university IT, citing corruption. But 3 people who worked in Cross's department reported the same thing over the following months. They would be working late, alone in the building, and they'd hear footsteps, slow, methodical, coming closer. But when they looked, no one was there, just the feeling of being watched, just the sense that someone or something was standing just outside their field of vision, waiting for them to turn their head, waiting for them to see. And once they saw, once they acknowledged it, the footsteps would stop, but the feeling wouldn't, it never would. You'd think this phenomenon would have stopped with digital technology. That modern cameras, with their instant captures and electronic sensors, would somehow be different. They're not. If anything, it's gotten worse. In 2011, a wedding photographer in Tennessee uploaded a full gallery to his website. Standard shots: ceremony, reception, first dance, cake cutting. Within hours, he started getting emails, hundreds of them, all saying the same thing: who's the person in the back? He didn't know what they meant. He reviewed every photo, and then he saw it. In 47 of the 212 photos, there was a figure, always in the background, always slightly out of focus, never in the same position twice, moving through the crowd, getting closer to the bride and groom with each shot. In the final photo, taken at the end of the night, the figure is standing directly behind the bride, close enough to touch, close enough that its shoulder should be visible in the foreground, but it's not. It's translucent, like smoke, like it's not entirely there. The photographer took the gallery down immediately, but the damage was done. People had downloaded the images, shared them, and within 6 months the bride was dead. Car accident. The groom survived but was left with severe brain damage. He can't speak, can't walk, but according to his nurses, he still responds to one thing. If you show him a photo, any photo, he starts screaming. Then there's the case of the live stream. In 2017, a gaming streamer in Germany was broadcasting from his apartment. Nothing unusual. He was playing a horror game, ironically. Chat was active, thousands of people watching. Around the 3-hour mark, people in the chat started commenting. They were saying there was someone behind him. He laughed it off. He lived alone. His camera only showed his face and the wall behind him. But chat kept insisting, so he turned his webcam around, panned it across his apartment, empty. He went back to the game, but chat wouldn't stop. They were saying the person wasn't behind him in the room. They were behind him in the webcam feed, in the digital space between his face and the camera. Someone clipped the stream. If you watch it, if you really look at the pixels, you can see it. A distortion. A cluster of darker pixels that don't quite move the way pixels should. It shifts, slowly, frame by frame. Over the course of 3 hours, it moves from the edge of the screen to the center, to right behind his head. And in the final minutes before he ended the stream, before he shut everything down and disappeared offline for 6 months, you can see his expression change. He's not looking at the game anymore. He's looking at the monitor, at his own reflection in the black border around the game window, at something standing behind him that only the camera could see. Digital cameras, phones, security footage, doorbell cameras. It's everywhere now. In 2019, a family in Ohio installed a Ring camera on their front door. Standard stuff, package theft prevention. But after 2 weeks, they started noticing something. Every night at exactly 3:14 a.m., the motion sensor would activate. They'd check the app, nothing there, just their empty porch, but the camera had recorded something. If you turned the brightness all the way up, if you watched frame by frame, there was movement. Something crossing the porch. Left to right, every single night, same time, same path. They called the police. The police reviewed the footage and said it was a glitch, but the family knew better, because on the 5th night, the thing on the camera stopped walking. It stopped directly in front of the lens, and it stayed there for 6 hours, just standing, not moving. And when the sun came up, when the motion sensor deactivated, they could see it clearly for just 1 frame. A face, pressed against the camera, mouth open, eyes wide, staring into the house. The family moved out a week later. The Ring camera is still there, still recording. The new owners haven't checked the app. Not yet, so here's what we know. For over 130 years, cameras have been capturing something they weren't designed to capture. Something that exists in the margins, in the space between moments. In the stopped time of a photograph, the frozen frames of a film, the digital slices of a video file. And every time we look at these images, every time we watch these videos, we're not just observing. We're participating, we're opening the door a little wider, we're inviting it in. And the thing is, you've probably already seen it. Maybe in an old family photo, maybe in a video on your phone. Maybe in the background of this very screen, in the dark pixels around the edges, where shapes can hide in plain sight. Because that's the truly terrifying part. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just needs to be seen, just once, just for a moment, and then it has you, it knows you, and it can wait. It's very, very good at waiting. The researchers who have studied this, the archivists and investigators and witnesses, most of them have gone silent. Some have died, some have simply stopped responding to inquiries, but the ones who are still willing to talk, off the record, in hushed conversations, they all say the same thing: stop looking at old footage. Stop zooming in on backgrounds, stop trying to find it, because the moment you see it, really see it, understand what you're looking at, it sees you too, and once it sees you, it never stops watching. It's there when you close your eyes, there in reflections, there in the corner of your vision, just outside focus, waiting for you to turn your head, waiting for you to acknowledge it. And if you do, if you give it that recognition, that observation, that witness, then you become part of the footage, part of the record, part of the long history of people who looked too closely at something they were never meant to see. The Hendrick family film, the wedding reels, the fair footage, the live stream, they're all still out there, archived, digitized, accessible, and people still watch them, still share them, still try to figure out what they're seeing. And every time someone does, every time someone freezes a frame and zooms in and stares into those dark pixels searching for answers, the pattern continues because that's what it wants. It wants to be seen. It wants to be acknowledged. It wants witnesses, and we keep giving it exactly what it wants. So maybe the question isn't what is it? Maybe the question is, what do we become when we see it? What part of us gets left behind in that frozen moment, trapped in the interstitial, unable to move forward or back, suspended forever in the space between life and death? The footage doesn't lie. It never has. We're just finally starting to understand what it's been showing us all along. Thank you for watching, and remember, if you made it this far, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us what time it is. Tell us you're still here while you still can.